I think any idea, I was thinking about what idea to talk about here, but it always needs some context, I think. Ideas are always woven into some type of fabric. And so in order to establish that context, as Sandeep mentioned, I work for Hamilton Sundstrand. We're in the aerospace business. I decided we had to go back in time a little bit with some history. So on December of 1903, the Wright brothers flew for the first time. And now, just to qualify it, this is the first controlled flight, powered and sustained in a fixed wing, because people have been flying around, just so any of your history buffs out there are going to get picky on me. But anyways, Orville was the man who flew the first time. He flew at a speed of a ground speed of about 7 miles an hour, covered 120 feet, and he basically flew in an airplane that carried himself. So the airplane weighed about 600 pounds. Let's say Orville weighed 150. The gross weight was 750 pounds. And with that, it brings into play what we care about in aviation: speed, range, and payload. Okay, so those are three of the things that we most care about. So with Wilbur and Orville's first flight, the race was on. And literally, it was a race in the beginning. Because, you know, if you want to go somewhere, well, take a train, right? Or take a car. If you want to go somewhere fast, you're going to fly. That is what differentiates aviation, airplanes, from other modes of transportation. And the race started with maybe, it's a picture of Howard Hughes' airplane. He hit 350 miles an hour in the 1930s. In 1935, 1947, we broke the sound barrier with the Bell X-1. In the 1970s, we built a supersonic transport, the Concorde, flew Mach 2. You could fly Paris to New York in about 3.5 hours. Now, if you really want to go fast, you'll hitch a ride on the NASA X-43, Mach 10, over 7,000 miles an hour. A little harder to get a ride on that one. But anyways, we know how to build fast airplanes. We can do it, okay? So our industry's there. The next thing we want to think about is getting from here to there. So Wilbur flew 120 feet. A few years later, I think it was only 16 or 17 years later, a couple of British aviators made the first transatlantic crossing. They flew from Newfoundland to Ireland. A few years after that, about 8 years after that, in the late 1920s, Lindbergh flew from New York to Paris. Nowadays, the longest commercial flight is actually from Newark to Singapore, about 9,500 miles, 19 hours on the airplane. But we've actually flown farther than that. In 2005, a Boeing 777-200LR flew 13,423 miles, 22 hours and 22 minutes. Now, in round numbers, the Earth's circumference, 25,000 miles. So halfway around the world, 12,500. So the 777 flew halfway around the world and then started on its way back. And the question is, do we need to build airplanes that have a longer range than that? You know, there's not really any point. So pretty much my industry, from a speed standpoint and a range standpoint, we're where we need to be. The next thing we think about is payload. We want to pick things up and move them. In about 1970, the Boeing 747 entered service. It weighed, now remember, Orville's airplane weighed 750 pounds. So in round numbers, let's just say the first 747 was 750,000 pounds gross takeoff weight. It's at about 450 passengers. All right, but that's a smaller airplane on this picture. The larger airplane is the A380, entered service a few years back. It's over 1 million pounds gross weight, 1.25 million pounds taken off. You can fly with 852 of your close friends on this airplane in single class seating and line up at New York immigration all at the same time if you really want to. Has a wingspan of almost 300 feet. So the wingspan is about a football field. I mean, we could build bigger airplanes, I suppose, although the urban legend is that in order to construct this airplane within France, towns were moved so that canals could be dug and highways could be widened so that parts of the airplane could be transported for final assembly in Toulouse. Further, urban legend has it that one of these airplanes that are in service is actually a private jet, and it's a two-deck airplane. The lower deck is actually, part of the lower deck is actually a garage for the owner of it, so he can transport his various cars with him as he flies around. Now, that's just a legend, but it may be true. So, from a standpoint of speed, range, and payload, my industry, we're pretty much, we can do whatever needs to be done. But I mean, implicit in this contract, I think, is that we want to get to our destination safely. Okay, and we've made pretty good progress there too. So this is fatalities per 100 million persons on board. So in the United States, there's about 11 million flights per year, about 33,000 flights per day. Your chance of flying of having an accident in the United States on the order of 1 in 10 million. Depending on the way you work the statistics, arguably you take a much greater chance every time you get into your car. So we're never completely satisfied with safety. We're always going to work on this. We want it to be identically zero, but for the past few years we've been getting there. We've eliminated systemic causes of accidents. And as a result, we've enjoyed some fairly significant growth in my business. So this is 40 years of passengers. Now this is revenue passenger miles in billions. So this year we're going to fly somewhat over 3,000 billion passenger miles. That's a lot of miles. We heard about growth rates and whatnot. This is about 7% annual growth for the past 40 years. So the industry has enjoyed success as a result of this. Now you must be saying, well, what's my idea? You guys must be pretty bored if you're working in aerospace. There's really not much left to do. That's actually not entirely true. Anybody who has flown probably has experienced some mishaps along the way. My associate, Andreas's wife and 2 children were supposed to leave yesterday, and they attended dinner last night as a result of such a delay and cancellation. But we heard that this is the decade of math or whatever yesterday, so let me work out the math for you, all right? We were given a goal of reliability on our equipment, 99.97%. That doesn't sound too bad. I think it sounds pretty good. I don't know about y'all. But at 33,000 flights per day, just within the United States, 33,000 flights per day, 99.97% delay and cancellation rate, my company alone causes 10 delays or cancellations around this country every day. All right, so we've got a lot of opportunity. I was behind the scenes at Disney with my wife, and there's all the show out front. Well, once you get behind the scenes at Disney, it's a completely different story. In my business, it's a completely different story too. Once we get behind the scenes, so I work for Hamilton Sundstrand. You might ask, well, who are they? If you flew here, I guarantee you our equipment was on board. I mean, unless you flew on an Antonov or Tupolev or something like that. If you flew on a Western airplane, our equipment was on board. These are the airplanes that we have equipment on that have been certified. It shows their entry into service, and every symbol on this represents an airplane that we are on. So we have some knowledge of the industry, and here's our crystal ball. Here's our idea. In the future, our industry, we're going to see 3 trends: more electric, this is for energy use, more intelligent, perhaps obvious, everything around is more intelligent, right? But an airplane that went into service in 1995 had about 1 million lines of code. The most recent airplane that went into service had about 10 million lines of code. That'll help us forecast some of these delays and cancellations and prevent them from ever happening. But perhaps the most interesting trend is more integrated. And this goes beyond the product. Yes, we'll work to integrate our product, but it really goes into the ecosystem itself. So we're experts in aerospace. We know about our business. We know about our product. We're very deep, sometimes even a little arrogant about it. But it's associations with companies like mine, Hamilton Sundstrand, and the host of our conference here, HCL. They can see across a wide band of industries. And through our association with them, within this ecosystem, perhaps there's an idea in another industry, an efficiency, some way of doing it that we hadn't thought of. And so our idea is, by working within this ecosystem, we can continue this trend of improvement that we've seen over the past 100 or so years. Thank you.